Most people use these words interchangeably, and that mistake is costing them in ways they can't see yet. Poor, broke, and cheap are not the same financial conditions described differently. They are three completely distinct relationships with money, each with a different cause, a different trajectory, and a completely different set of solutions. Misdiagnose which ones you're dealing with, and you'll spend years applying the wrong fix to the wrong problem and wondering why nothing has changed. I've been to all 3 at different points in my life, and here's what each one actually means and how to know which one you're in and what you have to do differently to get out of each one. Broke is temporary, and poor is a system. Cheap is a choice. And that one sentence contains the entire framework. And let me build it out. Being broke is a cash flow problem at a specific moment in time. You don't have enough money right now, and maybe you just graduated and your income hasn't caught up to you yet. Your expenses yet. I mean, maybe an unexpected bill landed in a month where the margins were already thin. Maybe you took a risk on something, a business, a career change, a move, and the financial return hasn't materialized yet. Broke has a clear cause, a clear timeline, and a clear exit. It's uncomfortable and stressful and real, but it is not permanent by nature. The broke person has a path forward that's visible, even if it's difficult. Being poor is different in a way that most personal finance content refuses to not acknowledge honestly. And poverty is not a mindset a problem or a spending problem or a discipline problem. It is a structural condition in which income is insufficient to cover basic needs, regardless of how carefully it's managed. And the poor person is not making bad decisions with good money. They are making the best possible decisions with money that isn't enough. No amount of budgeting advice and no sacrifice, no side hustle inspiration solves a problem whose root cause is that the math doesn't work at the income level available. Poverty requires income solutions, not spending solutions. And treating it like a mindset problem is both inaccurate and cruel. Being cheap is a choice, and sometimes a wise one, and sometimes a destructive one. And to minimize spending, regardless of whether the financial situation requires it, cheap is available at every income level. A person making $200,000 a year can be cheap. A person making $35,000 can be cheap. Cheap is a relationship with money. My timer on my Alexa's going off. Alexa, off. Cheap is a relationship with money shaped by values, by fear, by upbringing, or by deliberate strategy. It is the only one of the three that is entirely voluntarily and entirely within the individual's control. The broke trap. Why people stay longer than they should, which I did at my previous job. Broke is supposed to be temporary, but there's a mechanism that keeps people broke far longer than original circumstances requires, and it's called the stress tax. Researchers who study financial scarcity have found that being broke consumes cognitive bandwidth in the same way a heavy load consumes working memory. When you're constantly calculating whether you can afford something, running mental math on every purchase, or managing the anxiety of a thin margin, that mental energy is unavailable for long-term thinking, and that would actually solve the problem. So you're so focused at this week's gap that you can't think clearly about next year's trajectory. And that stress tax explains why broke people often make decisions that look irrational from the outside, but completely rational given the cognitive load that they're carrying. They don't save because the immediate pressure is too acute to think about the future. They don't invest because the concept of future returns requires mental bandwidth that already fully consumed. They make small, suboptimal short term decisions, not because they're bad at money, but because their mental resources are genuinely occupied elsewhere. The exit from broke requires reducing the cognitive load enough to think strategically, which usually means solving the most intermediate pressure first, even imperfectly, before addressing the long-term picture. And one less thing to worry about this week creates the mental space to make a better decision next month. And that's not inspirational, it's neurological. The the poverty distinction, what personal finance gets wrong here. Okay, here's what where most money content fails, and the people who need it most. And personal finance advice is almost universally written for people who are broke or cheap, people who have insufficient income and need help optimizing their relationship with it. It applies budgeting frameworks, saving strategies, and investment principles that work beautifully when there's enough money to go with. Applied to genuine poverty to households where income doesn't cover basic needs, regardless of optimization. And that advice doesn't just fail to help, it actively harms by implying that the person's situation is a result of poor choices rather than insufficient income. And that amplification is both wrong and demoralizing. And it sends people on years long journeys of self blaming for a condition that discipline alone cannot fix. The distinction matters practically because the solutions are different if you're broke. Budgeting and expense reduction can meaningfully change your trajectory. If you're poor, the leverage point is income. Beginning more of it, though, education through skill development, through career moves, through additional income streams, through systematic changes that are harder and slower but more fundamental than any spending adjustment. Spending optimization on income that doesn't cover basics is rearranging furniture in a burning building. The fire is the problem. Address the fire, and the honest self assessment question is this: if I spent nothing on anything non essential, no entertainment, no restraint, no subscription, nothing discriminatory, would my income cover my basic needs? If yes, you're probably broke or cheap, and spending optimization is a legitimate tool. If no, you're dealing with a poverty level income. A problem you need income solutions first, the cheap spectrum, where it helps and where it destroys. Cheap is the most complicated of the three because it exists on a spectrum from brilliant to self defeating, and the line between them is specific enough to be worth drawing carefully. Strategic frugality, the conscious decision to spend less than you could on things that you don't matter to you in order to have more for things that do. It's one of the most powerful wealth building tools available. The person who drives a 10-year-old car, shops secondhand, cooks at home, and invests the difference in making a choice that compounds dramatically over time. The version of cheap is not scarcity, thinking it's abundance, thinking it's applied deliberately. I have enough. I don't need to prove it by spending it. Destructive create cheapness operates differently. It's the person who refuses to spend $200 on a good pair of work boots and spends $400 over 2 years on cheap pairs of that fall apart. It's the person who skips the $150 car maintenance and pays $1,800 for the repair that deferred the maintenance cost. It's the person who won't spend the money on nutrition and spends it on healthcare instead. Destructive cheapness confuses the price of something with its cost. And those two numbers are frequent, very different. And the test for whether your cheapness is strategic or destructive is simple. Does this spending reduction cost me more in the long run than it saves in the short run? The $20 saved today is $200 later. The math isn't frugal, it's expensive. The true strategic frugality optimizes for total cost over time, not just the number on today's receipt. And the mindset that underlies all three, broke, poor, and cheap, all have emotional components that shape behavior as much as financial reality does. And the emotional component is where most people do their most important work, regardless of which category they're in. You know, broke often carries shame that prevents people from asking for help, from disclosing their situation to people who could assist, from taking advantage of resources that exist specifically for people in their position. The shame is understandable and counterproductive. Broke is a condition, not a character verdict, and poverty carries a specific psychological weight around possibility, a learned sense that certain financial outcomes are not available to you based on what you've seen or experienced. And that belief is not irrational given the evidence available in many people's lives. So challenging it requires evidence to the contrary, which is one reason mentorship or community and exposure to different financial realities matters as much as the tactical advice. Cheap, particularly the fear-based version that hoarders rather than strategizes, is often rooted in scarcity experiences that no longer apply to current financial situations. Someone who grew up poor is now genuinely financially comfortable They still operate from scarcity instincts that serve them in childhood and limit them in adulthood. The work there is recognizing that the rules have changed even when the feelings haven't caught up yet. The questioning that changes everything too. Before any strategy, any budgeting, any financial planning, and most importantly, the question you can ask yourself is an honest one. Which one of these three am I actually dealing with right now? Not which one feels most comfortable to identify with, not which one has the best story attached to it. Which one is actually true based on the numbers? If you're broke, the cash flow management and time. If you're poor, the path is income and, and systematic change. If you're cheap, the path is deciding whether your cheapness is serving you or costing you and adjusting accordingly. Get the diagnosis right, and the solution becomes obvious. Get it wrong, and you'll keep working hard, and something that was never going to fix the actual problem. Thanks for watching. Like and comment if you'd like, and subscribe. I'd love to hear from you also in the comments. And if you really like me, feel free to buy me a coffee. It's in the description and on the front page as well. Check out this video to the right. It's also got some more tips that might also help you in your. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next.